perceive the concept of time. The concept of time is it's a delay in your ability to manifest your creative potential, whereas you didn't have a delay before. It was like everybody was fighting these conjure wars all the time. It was like, we don't talk about the conjure wars. And people had all these mystic powers, and they would liberally use them. But most of the people were what we call benevolent, good-hearted, kind people, and they would normally, you didn't have a conflict that required nefarious violence. What we would do is we were more into the healing arts, the learning. Like, this was University Earth before it became what it is now, the prison planet. Mm-hmm. It became the prison planet because one of the Anunnaki didn't like the feminine nature of the matriarchs that ran the planet and the feminine nature of the planet, and wanted to, his name was Enlil. Now, caveat, which means buyer beware. The caveat is this: I read this stuff as energy, but it's told in story format, like a conceptual physics story, so that people can more readily grasp these concepts. When you tell them in story form, it makes it easier for them to understand what you're talking about than if you was to put it in a mathematical formula. Mm-hmm. So even when I talk about the mothership, I can only read it as an energy till I see it. Mm-hmm. Anything that you don't see, you have to read it as an energy signature. And the description of the thing tells you the nature or the energy expression that's being expressed. The mother plane is just the when you read it as an energy, it's all things coming forth from the divine feminine as the great mother. But when you read it as an actual construct, it becomes a physical object, right? And if you haven't seen it, you got a miscalculation taking place because you can't physically see the object. You have to read it as an energy. Anything that somebody tell you that you can't physically see, the description tells you the nature of the energy that's being used. So you have to read it as the energy first before you apply it to the 3D reality, because the 3D reality is primarily elusive in its understanding of spiritual things, because you have to translate it like a foreign language into the common language. If you're in China, you got to translate it into Chinese. If you're in America, you got to translate it into American English. If you're in London, you have to be able to translate it into the Queen's English. So all these different perceptions, you still have to be able to reduce them to a common descriptive analysis that the average person can digest and utilize the information to its greatest advantage. So always read it as an energy first until you see it. And then think about this. Based on your description you just gave, that would mean that the all-knowing divine mother doesn't know what she's creating. She wouldn't be able to know in advance. Okay. Therefore, she would have no control over the creation itself, because it's an unknown variable. It's X marks the spot, or the Y in algebra. Right? So that's not consistent with the understanding of the nature of creation. Mm-hmm. The creator understands the creation, whether it's assuming the form of me or you. Mm-hmm. Right? We developed egos. Our egos have to be purified. And a purified ego is just this: everybody in the world told you how they perceive you. Mm-hmm. That's your ego. Everything they told you that you believe about yourself is your ego. The purification process is you go through the ego, and those things that don't truly apply to you, you discard them from your ego self until higher consciousness can absorb the lower consciousness and they become one. These egos, like Tahuti. Tahuti was the manifestation of me as an ego. Now, the ego can be regenerated if the genetic frequency aligns with the timing. The genetic frequency is fed through the DNA from the mitochondrial to tell it how to vibrate. That's all source energy. The mitochondrial is the step down capacitor because the energy that it takes to run us is the same as a neutron star. But you can't put a neutron star in the human body without spontaneous combustion unless you have a step down capacitor, or what we call on a mini bike is called a governor, to limit the amount of speed you can put behind this machine or the amount of energy it can push out. So the energy that's coming from the mitochondrial activates certain codons on the DNA. They work hand in hand with the Shu and Tefnet resonance and the solar rays from the sun in order for us to manifest ourselves. And the egos that we become, if they become what we call a noteworthy creation, is able to be duplicated in the future. That's what we call the reincarnation cycles. All it is your ego. They tell you that it's a soul trap, don't go into the light, all that bullshit, right? Everything that you're doing is part of your ego self seeking to purify its consciousness so that it can facilitate the higher consciousness of the higher self. We all got a personal tutor, but we don't know how to access it. The personal tutor, we call it our holy guardian angel. The holy guardian angel was written about by Aleister Crowley, but the concept goes back to ancient Kemet, and he got it, as according to him, from the goddess Iwas, which was the spirit of the great tree of the earth, which was also chopped down, by the way. It was in Arizona, where we see as the Devil's Hill, or what do they call it? The Devil's Tower. That's one of the largest trees that we had. Some of the trees used to touch the atmosphere, and that's one of them right there. But there's more of them around the world. And this is why they had the tree in Avatar movie named Iwas. It's the same embodiment. So we used to be able to upload our consciousness into the tree. And when we go to the consciousness in the new lifetime, it tunes the DNA in to the frequency you are, and then it downloads your consciousness back to you so you know everything you ever knew. They called that the tree of eternal knowledge. And that's the one that they told Adam and Eve in the garden not to eat, even though it's a mythical story. The story was told to hold certain keys to the understanding of accessing the tree of knowledge and the tree of eternal life, which is the Holy Sephirah. We eternal beings, but we live in infinite space based on a time construct. The purpose of the delay in the manifestation was people was manifesting stuff and then they would immediately regret it. So the weeding out the regret is done by putting a delay. And then if you don't do the maintenance to bring it about, you can't manifest it. It won't produce itself, because you got to do certain maintenance along the way. In other words, you got to write your destiny and then walk the path to lead you to that. And most people are inherently being taught through the system to be lazy when it comes to manifesting their dreams in order to support the dreams of the system that don't care about us.
Right.
Freedom will make the lesser evolved beings have a delay still. They will be part the three-dimensional lessons. What we learn from the third dimension, it will make the lesser evolved beings have a harder time to manifest without doing the work. then the higher evolved beings was doing the work even in the 3D of merging their higher consciousness with the ego self. It's the women are waking up on the earth to their true power. The priestesses of Oshun are returning with the sweet waters. When this happened, they individually raise their frequency, and when they come in contact in a group, they raise the group frequency, and it causes that effect on the earth. It wakes Earth up. Mother Earth wake up to shake off the parasites. She changes the frequency, and whole species are annihilated and new species emerged. We're going to be seeing new animals that we never knew existed. And then we're going to see animals disappear that's been here for the longest. One of the key catalysts, if you go back, I did a public service announcement about the goddess glow up, where there's a sister, Hydea Barber, was leading a healing group in Florida. And that was instrumental in flipping the grid, because the women had to go to the healing circle, and the more of the priestesses that got healed, the more they collectively together, 100 monkey effect, or what we call critical mass, changes the frequency of the planet. And her program was in the process on Father's Day. So it's not a coincidence. All these things are already written in prophecy. They're written in historical records, and it's not the first time it's happened. We go through cycles on Earth. Right now, we leave in a lunar cycle, going into a solar cycle. The lunar cycle was when we was clouded with the night vision, not understanding our dreams, which make us not really understand our thoughts. The sun cycle comes in, it changes the vibrational frequency, and it elevates the frequency of the individuals. And the earth is controlled by the mitochondrial force. Mitochondrial can be found in a free radical form in the soil, but you can't find DNA in a free radical form in the soil. The DNA is made up of the 21 complex amino acids, and these are in crystalline form. In other words, they microprocessing computers, self-replicating using phalanx technology. And that's why the DNA replication takes place, to exchange the data from the different cells so they all on the same page.
Right.
Well, you can, but the fourth dimensional is more like the realm of the dream. And the astral plane is like a training simulator that we go to learn how to control our spiritual self, our higher self. We learn how to gain control of the faculties, or what we call spiritual senses, using the astral plane as like a mirror universe to train in, so that we don't spill over into the 3D with all these new creations that we fabricated in our mind. So you needed a controlled location. What we call it in ancient Kemet, they call it the halls of Amenti, which is the great university of the soul. He just talks about the halls of Amenti being the place of higher evolved souls. He touched on it several times in the text, and he says that he is the keeper of the information in the halls, in the sacred halls. He's basically the librarian. No, the NBA would be what we call the fifth dimension. The developmental would be the third dimension. And the European League would be the astral plane. If you're using basketball as the analogy.
As an analogy, right.
Right. So it's a whole different league, but you can go get your skills sharp enough to come back and get in the NBA.
Right.
Developmental, you can get to the NBA. Right. But if you go to Europe, that means that you already NBA ready. You just not it's too many players in the NBA for you to make it. You've been bumped out.
Oh shit.
So you go over there and you can still make a living doing what you love. You go into the astral realm, you can still develop your spiritual senses to a higher degree than you could trying to do it in a three-dimensional reality. The problem is with most of us is we don't want to follow the steps because we think that somebody giving us rules. Well, there's rules to govern the processes. Mm-hmm. And they all want to take process out of development, and you can't do that. Because that's why we in the time matrix. So to stop people from creating the strangest creatures, figments of their imagination becoming real, you need the manifestation delay of the third dimension until they get control of the self. And don't nobody want to have self-control. They want to control everybody else instead.
Right. Damn. So we would need for it to get back to instant manifestation, humanity will need ultimate self-discipline, huh?
Yep.
Saturn,
and that's where you're gonna lose most of the people.
Yeah.
Because everybody is willing to discipline somebody else, but very few are willing to do the self-discipline.
Right. Yes.
You don't want to tell yourself what to do, but you want to tell somebody else what to do.
Right. No, indeed. That self-discipline. And Saturn governs self-discipline. Isn't that associated with Saturn?
Saturn is the great judge. Saturn is when you don't want to do your work, the energy of Saturn, which actually is its moon Lilith. And this is the compel you to do what you came to Earth to do. And this is the energy that it comes through the Saturnian forces.
Mm.
Okay, it's the understanding is that we won't experience a three-dimensional fixed position reality, which is nothing could be further from the truth. We're still going to experience the same as if we in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
But the constructs that govern us is going to change. It's like changing presidents or changing kings or any. So the energy that we'll be ruled by is a higher consciousness energy, because people getting away from just believing some shit because the preacher said it to show me where you got that from. I want to know. I want to see it for myself. This is the fifth dimensional mind matrix operating in 3D, demanding the proof to the statement. Don't just tell me what to do. Tell me where to find where you got it from. Right? So the human was going through a Kali Yuga, which is an amnesia state. And while you're going through this Kali Yuga, prior to it, Tahuti's told the people to start keeping a written record. And they started with the writings in stone because the memory was still intact of the planet.
Right.
So the things that's written in stone, where we talk like the hieroglyphics in Kemet in Mexico and China, and then we talk about like the Sumerian tablets, and then you end up with your Vedic texts, your sutras of India, are all ancient texts. And they don't want us to know what that stuff say. But now, because people have to write translations and dictionaries to help us read this stuff, we start to be able to read it for ourselves, reading the writing on the wall, as they say. And the writing on the wall tells the story of the holy drama. Everything we doing in our reality, no matter how simple or how complex it is, it all caters to the fruition of the holy drama, which is the Osirian resurrection story, the return of the Great Father, which comes in as a solar ray, which activates the Great Mother, which in turn comes out as a frequency from the planet, which was a Schumann resonance, which is now a Shu and Tefnut resonance, which is a different vibrational frequency of balance. Well, that's that solar flare.
Mm-hmm.
right? That's what the solar flare was. It was the message from the sun, which is the great father, to Earth, which is the great mother, telling her it's time to wake up. These kids is ready to eat dinner or breakfast or whatever you want to call it. And we need to start doing our parental duties to raise these and protect these children because somebody dropped the ball. Mm-hmm. It's all in them frequencies. And the scientists have gauges and meters and all kind of